Good evening and welcome to the Daily News Roundup. I am Abigail Smythe. Heading straight into the newscast, the William Knibb High School student who stabbed his 16-year-old schoolmate Kamal Hall to death on March 21 has been sentenced to 4 years and 10 months in prison. The sentence was handed down on Monday by presiding High Court Justice Andrea Thomas when the matter was heard before the St. James Circuit Court after being transferred to St. James from the Trelawney Circuit Court. The defendant, whose name is being withheld because he is a minor, was represented during the hearing by attorney at law Marissa Dalrymple Philibert. On March 21, Hall, who was the goalkeeper for William Knibb Memorial High School's football team, and the other boy got into a fight on the grounds of the school compound, during which a knife was used to stab Hall in the neck. Hall was rushed to hospital where he was subsequently pronounced dead. Reports state that the fight was over a guard ring which Hall was allegedly accused of stealing. Guard rings are believed to offer supernatural protection from harm. During his previous appearance in the Trelawney Circuit Court on November 7, the young convict pleaded guilty to manslaughter. In the meantime, relatives of Kamal Hall are dissatisfied with the killer's prison sentence. His mother says the family is displeased with what they consider to be a light sentence for her son's killer. Alison Hall, aunt of the deceased schoolboy, adds that her brother, Kamal's father, has struggled sporadically with illness since his son's death. The Ministry of Health and Wellness says it is working with key partners on a nationally coordinated response to support sexual and reproductive health programs for youth. It says the move comes following an increase in HIV infections and reports of risky sexual practices. State Minister Juliet Cuthbert Flynn says data from the National Family Planning Board on youth sexual health practices over the last 4 years show a steady rise in new cases of HIV among the youth population. She notes that in 2020, of the 618 new HIV cases reported, 16% or 99 fell in the adolescent age group of 15 to 19. Additionally, a 2017 survey picked up high levels of sexual risk-taking behavior, including early sexual debut, multiple sex partnerships, and cross-generational sex and transactional practices among the youth population. The state minister says another concern is information from the Registrar General's Department, which shows that 18% of births are among women 16 to 24 years old. She says that adolescent population must have access to credible information and services to make responsible decisions regarding their reproductive health. She says the ministry is willing to support and endorse interventions that target the youth and to help them foster good sexual health practices and lead an all-round healthy lifestyle. A medical professional, Dr. Winston Dawes, is suggesting that public health facilities be given the latitude to devise strategies to maintain restrooms. The former senior medical officer at Mapen Hospital says a small fee should be charged for the use of restrooms at public hospitals and health centers. He says a similar system was implemented at Mapen Hospital to maintain the facilities. The restroom, he says, was refurbished with modern fixtures and someone was hired to keep the area clean. Highlighting that this happens in other countries, Dr. Dawes questions why Jamaicans are, quote, so obsessed with having things free and non-functional rather than even making a small contribution to keep things clean, end quote. Dr. Dawes says the authorities need to pump more resources into the health facilities as there is competition for funding among areas such as maintenance of toilets, provision of drugs, as well as payment of utility bills and salaries. The Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities says some schools are still refusing to accept students with disabilities, even 9 months after the Disabilities Act and its regulations came into effect. The law took effect in February and calls for the promotion and protection of the rights of persons with disabilities. The Council's Executive Director, Dr. Christine Hendricks, stresses that by law, all schools must be accessible to students with disabilities. She points out that educators have a duty to see to it that no child is left behind. Dr. Hendricks says persons with disabilities need to have independence so they are, quote, able to achieve and get to their maximum potential just like everybody else, end quote. Highlighting what she says is an urgent need for the government to provide resources to facilitate persons with disabilities. She notes that it is more important now that the Disabilities Act 2014 and its regulations are in effect. According to the doctor, for the act to be effective, the government as standard bearer must ensure additional resources and services are provided through its ministries, departments and agencies to prevent penalties. She adds that the council will hold a series of engagements with key stakeholders this week as it moves to create more awareness in responding to the needs of persons with disabilities. A man has been hospitalized after being shot during a confrontation with police following a bizarre series of events which unfolded in Mandeville Monday afternoon. A senior police source says about 2 o'clock, the man, who is believed to be of unsound mind, removed a clamp from a vehicle that was parked in a no-parking zone near the town centre on Manchester Road. A team of municipal police responsible for clamping vehicles chased the man to the parking lot of Bankhouse Mall off Manchester Road. A police source says the man removed the clamp for the vehicle and placed it in the car trunk. The municipal team called the police and they responded and ended up on Bankhouse Mall, where there was a standoff for over an hour. The source says they called for backup and summoned the mental health unit, and in the process of treating him, the man attacked them. It is reported that the man armed with a knife attacked both the police and healthcare workers. A video which has gone viral on social media shows the man holding stones and resisting to comply with the police before he was shot in his foot. He was taken to hospital where he has been admitted for treatment. The St. Mary police are investigating the fatal shooting of a man who was among 5 friends shot by gunmen while walking in Stewarttown in the parish shortly after 2 a.m. on Tuesday. A police source says the men were walking along the Stewarttown main road near Arokabessa when a car drove up with several men aboard. The occupants of the vehicle allegedly fired shots, hitting the men. The vehicle sped off following the shooting. It was later discovered that 4 of the men were suffering from gunshot wounds and another died as a result of injuries received during the gunfire. The deceased's name has not yet been ascertained. The Supreme Court has awarded Muriel Fraser just over $2.4 million for the death of her son, Imran Ferguson, who died as a result of injuries he received after being badly beaten in police custody in 2010. Fraser had sought $20 million as redress for constitutional breaches and vindicatory damages, but was only awarded $2.4 million in damages, in addition to special damages of $60,000, which she had borrowed to assist with funeral expenses. The Ministry of Justice had contributed $120,000 towards the funeral. The mother of the 21-year-old farmer and construction worker had filed the claim against the government in 2012. The Attorney General did not file a defense, so a default judgment was entered in January 2018. In October, Justice Tanya Mott-Tuller-Reid made the award for damages after hearing submissions and reviewing evidence. She awarded special damages of $60,000 plus interest at 3% per annum from January 16, 2010 to October 27, 2022. Damages for pain and suffering being $600,000 with 3% from August 2012 to October 2022. And damages for false imprisonment at $1.2 million with 3% interest from January 10, 2010 to October 2022. The award for exemplary damages was $750,000, while for loss of expectation of life, $240,000 was awarded. Attorney at law John Clark says the case is going to be appealed. According to reports, on January 10, 2010, Ferguson, who lived in Green Acres, St. Catherine, was taken into police custody for damaging the windshield of a motor vehicle that was being driven by a female. He was arrested and charged with malicious destruction of property and placed in the holding area in full view of police officers on duty at the Spanish Town Police Station lockup, pending bail. 6 days later, Ferguson was found unresponsive on the floor of the cell and was taken to the Spanish Town Hospital. He was later transported to the Kingston Public Hospital, where he died 3 days later. Fraser said she did not know that her son was either jailed or hospitalized. She said someone who worked at a funeral home and knew her son told her that his body had turned up there, tagged with a different name. The post-mortem and medical reports revealed that Ferguson suffered a fractured skull and multiple blunt force impact to the extremities, head, and other parts of the body. The post-mortem report stated that the head injury was caused by a hard and heavy blunt weapon with a small striking surface. During an inquest, the special coroner had also found the officer's behavior to be grossly negligent and even considered manslaughter as a possible charge. However, no one was charged. The body of a man found on a playfield in Ensom City, St. Catherine, Monday morning has been identified as that of 23-year-old Jadon Mackenzie. Mackenzie was reported missing from Eltham, Spanish Town on Sunday. Joggers stumbled upon his body about 6:30 a.m. and alerted the police. The body had a bullet wound and part of the left hand was cut off. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has declared states of emergency in 7 parishes. The emergency measure covers St. Anne, Clarendon, St. Catherine, sections of Kingston and St. Andrew, and the western parishes of St. James, Hanover, and Westmoreland. The declaration comes 1 week after states of emergency ended in 7 parishes following the decision by the parliamentary opposition not to support an extension. The Prime Minister, responding to a question at a press conference, made it clear that states of emergency will remain a feature of Jamaica's security response for the foreseeable future. In business news, Jamaicans are being urged to temper their appetite for foreign-produced essential oils and to invest in local production to tap into a global industry valued at $8.8 billion. This is expected to exceed $15 billion by 2027. State Minister for Industry Dr. Norman Dunn says stimulating the local sector will reinvigorate rural agricultural-based communities and spur employment, thus countering urban drift, which has caused farming regions to hemorrhage working-age youth. Dunn chides Jamaicans for primarily being consumers of essential oils instead of being producers. It is projected that 4,500 people will be impacted by the end of a 4-year cycle of the Jamaica Business Development Corporation JBDC project. Farmers and other stakeholders along the value chain have been challenged to tap into the opportunity to reap rich rewards. Pimento, turmeric, ginger, lemongrass or fever grass, castor beans are among the crops targeted for extraction in the first phase of the campaign, which is themed Developing Rich Industry Value Chains for Export. Minister Dunn calls the industry a good business decision for Jamaica. And in the region, Honduras has become the second country in Central America to impose a state of exception, suspending some constitutional rights to help fight street gangs when a decree took effect on Monday. The extraordinary measures target the capital, Tegucigalpa, and the northern business hub of San Pedro Sula, which have both struggled under the sway of powerful gangs like Barrio 18 and MS-13. The decree, published Monday, will last 1 month, but lawmakers will have the ability to extend it, something that has happened repeatedly in El Salvador since a state of exception was imposed in March. The Honduran measures affect constitutional rights of association, free movement, searches, and arrests. The decree gave as justification the threat to life and property posed by the gangs in both cities. On the international scene, Russian authorities rejected a price cap on the country's oil set by Ukraine's Western supporters and threatened on Saturday to stop supplying the nations that endorsed it. Australia, Britain, Canada, Japan, the United States, and the 27-nation European Union agreed on Friday to cap what they would pay for Russian oil at $60 per barrel. The limit took effect on Monday, along with an EU embargo on Russian oil shipped by sea. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says Russia needed to analyze the situation before deciding on a specific response, but that it would not accept the price ceiling. Meanwhile, the office of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called for a lower price cap, saying the one adopted by the EU and the group of 7 leading economies didn't go far enough. And still on the international scene, Indonesia's parliament unanimously passed a long-awaited revision of the country's penal code on Tuesday. The code criminalizes sex outside of marriage for citizens as well as foreigners, prohibits promotion of contraception, and bans defamation of the president and state institutions. The amended code also expands an existing blasphemy law and maintains a 5-year prison term for deviations from the central tenets of Indonesia's 6 recognized religions: Islam, Protestantism, Catholicism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Citizens can face a 10-year prison term for associating with organizations that follow Marxist-Leninist ideology and a 4-year sentence for spreading communism. The code maintains the previous criminalization of abortion but adds exceptions for women with life-threatening medical conditions and for rape, provided that the fetus is less than 12 weeks old, in line with what is already provided in a 2004 medical practice law. And in sports, Brazil coasted into the quarterfinals of the World Cup as an exuberant first-half performance helped them to a 4-1 win over South Korea on Monday. The Brazilians were boosted by the return of Neymar, who suffered an ankle injury in the opening win over Serbia, and the 30-year-old announced his return with a penalty that moved him 1 goal behind Pele's international record of 77, which doubled Brazil's lead after Vinicius Junior's cool opener. Richarlison then netted his 3rd goal of the tournament after some of the most exquisite build-up, and it was 4-0 before the break when West Ham's Lucas Paqueta guided in a shot to get in on the act. Brazil now advance to the last 8 of the tournament, where a clash with Croatia awaits on Friday. And that's it for your news roundup for today. I am Abigail Smythe. See you next time.